Bizarre experiments. When science ventures into the extraordinary, what drives humans to push beyond the boundaries of convention and into the realm of the bizarre. In the pursuit of knowledge, scientists have sometimes crossed invisible lines, venturing into territories where fascination and horror intertwine like a double helix. I'm Doctor Your Name, and today we're exploring some of the most bizarre experiments ever conducted in the name of science. These aren't just oddities, they're windows into the darker corners of scientific curiosity, where the question, can we, often overshadowed the question, should we, prepare to be disturbed, amazed, and perhaps even enlightened. The thin line between genius and madness, the history of science is paved with strange experiments. But what makes an experiment truly bizarre? Is it the methodology, the subject matter, or the unsettling questions it forces us to confront? The experiments we'll examine today pushed boundaries in ways that modern ethics would never permit. Yet from these shadowy endeavors emerged knowledge that, in some cases, transformed medicine, psychology, and our understanding of life itself. As we journey through these peculiar chapters of scientific history, I invite you to consider, where is the line between visionary exploration and reckless experimentation? And who should decide when that line has been crossed? Two HEADS are better than one. In the cold climate of Soviet Russia during the 1950s, surgeon Vladimir Demikhov embarked on one of the most macabre experiments in medical history. His goal seemed straightforward, yet profoundly disturbing: to create a two-headed dog. Demikhov meticulously grafted the head, shoulders, and front legs of a small puppy onto the neck of a larger adult dog. Blood vessels and airways were connected, enabling both heads to function simultaneously, drinking, eating, and responding to stimuli independently. The result was a creature of nightmares, yet for Demikhov, it represented a breakthrough in transplantation techniques. These grotesque chimeras lived for only a few days to a few months, their brief existence marked by a surreal duality that haunts medical literature to this day. The legacy of Demikhov monstrs, what could possibly justify such disturbing experimentation? Demikhov wasn't motivated by sadism, but by a vision of saving human lives through organ transplantation. His work, however ethically problematic through modern eyes, pioneered techniques that would later be refined for human heart and lung transplants. Dr. Christian Barnard, who performed the first successful human heart transplant in 1967, directly credited Demikhov's bizarre experiments as essential to his achievement. Here lies the perplexing paradox. From these grotesque investigations emerged life-saving medical procedures. Should we condemn the methods while celebrating the outcomes? This question hangs over Demikhov's work like a spectral shadow, refusing easy resolution. The Stanford prison experiment. When roles consume reality in 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo transformed the basement of Stanford University's psychology building into a makeshift prison. 24 ordinary college students were randomly assigned roles as prisoners or guards. What unfolded next shocked even the experimenters themselves. Within days, the guards embraced their authority with disturbing enthusiasm. They subjected prisoners to increasingly humiliating and psychologically torturous conditions. The prisoners either rebelled violently or sank into depressive submission. The experiment, planned for 2 weeks, was terminated after just 6 days as the situation spiraled beyond control. Young men who had been psychologically stable began exhibiting signs of extreme distress and sadistic behavior, merely from adopting artificial roles in an artificial environment. The dark mirror of authority, what makes the Stanford prison experiment particularly chilling, is its implications. Zimbardo demonstrated how readily ordinary people can transform when given power over others, how the mere trappings of authority can unleash our capacity for cruelty. This experiment haunts us because it suggests something unsettling about human nature. That the line between civilized behavior and tyranny may be frighteningly thin, dependent more on circumstance than character. Decades later, when images emerged from Abu Ghraib prison showing American soldiers humiliating Iraqi prisoners, Zimbardo recognized the same psychological mechanisms at work. His bizarre experiment had predicted a dark reality that would play out on the world stage. The monster study. Words That Wound in 1939, at the University of Iowa, speech pathologist Wendell Johnson conducted an experiment so troubling it would later be dubbed the monster study by his own colleagues. Johnson selected 22 orphan children and divided them into two groups. Half received positive speech therapy, praising their fluency. The other half, including children with no speech problems whatsoever, were subjected to harsh criticism. These children were told they were beginning to stutter, that they had serious speech defects, and that they must correct themselves constantly. The results were devastating. Children who had spoken normally developed stutters, nervous facial tics, and became withdrawn. Some remained afflicted with speech problems for the remainder of their lives. Casualties of an experiment designed to prove that stuttering was environmentally induced rather than innate. The power of suggestion, the monster study, reveals the profound vulnerability of the developing mind to negative suggestion. Children told they were defective began to embody that belief, their speech patterns physically manifesting the anxiety and insecurity implanted by authority figures. For decades, this study remained hidden, buried in academic archives out of shame. When finally exposed in 2001, it resulted in a $925,000 settlement for the surviving subjects. Yet no compensation could restore what had been taken from them. The natural fluency of speech and freedom from self-consciousness that had been sacrificed on the altar of scientific inquiry. This experiment forces us to confront the insidious power of words to shape reality, and the special responsibility scientists bear when their subjects are vulnerable and impressionable. Raising the Dead. Robert E. Cornish's resurrection, experimentation, Can Death Be Reversed? In the 1930s, Dr. Robert E. Cornish believed it could, and set out to prove it through a series of experiments that blurred the boundary between life and death. Cornish's methodology was as macabre as it was methodical. He would euthanize dogs with nitrogen gas and then attempt to resuscitate them using a bizarre apparatus, a teeter-totter-like device that rocked the bodies to circulate blood, combined with artificial respiration and injections of adrenaline and anticoagulants. Against all odds, Cornish claimed success with two dogs, named Lazarus IV and V, who were reportedly revived after clinical death. Though severely brain damaged, these canine subjects lived for months afterward, existing in a twilight state between proper life and death. The threshold of mortality. Cornish's experiments were sensationalized in the press and even inspired a Hollywood horror film. Yet beneath the spectacle lay a serious scientific question. Where exactly is the threshold between life and death? His work, though ethically problematic and scientifically crude, contributed to our understanding of resuscitation medicine. Modern techniques like CPR, defibrillation, and therapeutic hypothermia, which have saved countless lives, emerged from the conceptual groundwork laid by resurrection experiments. Cornish himself became obsessed with his research, even requesting permission to attempt his techniques on executed prisoners. This request was denied, but the very fact it was made reveals how the pursuit of knowledge can sometimes lead researchers down disturbing paths. Tusko the Elephant. A psychedelic tragedy on August 3, 1962, an elephant named Tusko at the Oklahoma City Zoo was injected with 297 milligrams of LSD, roughly 3,000 times the typical human dose. This was not an act of cruelty for its own sake, but a bizarrely conceived experiment to induce a natural state of temporary madness male elephants experience. The researchers, led by Dr. Louis Jolyon West, believed LSD might trigger this state, providing insights into psychosis. What followed was both tragic and scientifically worthless. Tusko trumpeted, collapsed, seized violently, and, despite desperate attempts to save him with antipsychotics, died less than 2 hours later. The grotesque miscalculation of dosage had transformed scientific inquiry into unintentional slaughter. The burden of ignorance, the Tusko experiment, stands as a monument to scientific hubris, a cautionary tale of what happens when eagerness outpaces knowledge. The researchers failed to account for differences in metabolism and brain chemistry between species, applying human pharmacological models to an elephant with fatal consequences. The experiment was neither replicated nor properly controlled, leaving its only legacy as a stark reminder of the responsibility scientists bear toward their subjects. Tusco's needless death eventually contributed to the development of stricter regulations governing animal experimentation. Perhaps most disturbing was the researchers' published conclusion that elephants are highly sensitive to LSD, a grotesque understatement that revealed their failure to grasp the ethical implications of their actions. The ultimate transplant, modern head transplantation. While most of our bizarre experiments belong to history, some continue into the present day. Italian neurosurgeon Sergio Canavero has proposed something straight from science fiction, a procedure to transplant a human head from one body to another. Canavero claims to have developed a protocol called Heaven Head Anastomosis Venture that would sever and reconnect the spinal cord using a special blade and polyethylene glycol fusion. In 2017, he claimed to have successfully performed the procedure on a corpse and announced living human trials were imminent. The scientific community has responded with overwhelming skepticism, calling the proposal everything from premature to impossible with current technology. Yet Canavero continues his quest, raising profound questions about the boundary between visionary science and dangerous ambition. Frankenstein's shadow head transplantation exists in the liminal space between medical possibility and science fiction. The technical obstacles are formidable. Reconnecting severed spinal nerves, preventing immune rejection, and integrating the brain with a foreign nervous system all seem insurmountable with current technology. Yet we must ask, if such a procedure becomes possible, what would it mean for human identity? Would the resulting person be the donor of the head, the donor of the body, or something altogether new? These are not merely technical questions, but philosophical ones that probe the very nature of personhood. Canavero's pursuit forces us to confront the Frankenstein dilemma that has haunted science for centuries. Just because we might eventually be able to do something, does that mean we should? The ethical evolution of scientific exploration. As we reflect on these bizarre experiments, a pattern emerges. Science at its boundaries often challenges not just what we know, but who we are as a species. The most disturbing experiments often yield the most profound insights, not only about the natural world, but about ourselves as investigators of that world. Today, institutional review boards, ethical guidelines, and greater transparency protect both human and animal subjects from the excesses of unchecked scientific curiosity. Yet the tension remains between expanding knowledge and respecting boundaries. Perhaps the greatest value of these bizarre experiments lies not in their direct findings, but in the ethical conversations they force us to have. They are dark mirrors reflecting uncomfortable truths about our quest for knowledge and the price we're willing to pay for it. I leave you with this question. In pursuing the unknown, how do we honor both our curiosity and our humanity? The answer, like science itself, continues to evolve. Music swells, then fades. Join us next time as we explore ethically questionable experiments and the moral boundaries they crossed. Until then, keep questioning, keep thinking, and remember, the strangest experiments often reveal the most about who we are. End credits roll.